Hey, what's going on, everybody? Brett Shotcavis here, and we are talking tonight about how to invest with a purpose, how to start your own assisted living mansion, how to create a life of financial freedom for yourself and your partners, for your family, and how to do it in a way where you are loving what you do, how to do it in a way where you are contributing to your city, your town, to your community, where you're actually making money by helping people. Right? There's lots of ways to make money in this world, and some of them are not the best ways, and some of them you cut the corners in life. But if you can make a great income, if you can set yourself up for retirement, for financial independence in a short amount of time, but you're doing it to help people that actually need help, right? The seniors at the end of life, you're 85, you're 90, you're 100 years old. They're kind of shunned in our society. They're pushed to the side, right? They're not seen for the value that they used to have, and a lot of times you get dementia, you have memory care issues, and it's just a group of people that need help. They need care, and they need someone to be their advocate. So that's what we do here, right? We are the advocate. We're the angel for these grandmas and grandpas. And angels get paid really well. So that's something that I love. I'm passionate about it. It has been something that's changed my life. It's changed my business partners' lives, and it's just a win-win all around. It is an awesome industry, an awesome business, because again, like I said, you're going to make great money. You really need to do one deal. It's a one and done kind of thing. I can show you how we're making 40 as a minimum to $60,000 net each month. That's from one assisted living mansion. So we do all this, and we're loving on people. We love what we do. We have fun. We go there, we play, we sing, we do karaoke, we play bingo. We just mess around with some grandmas and grandpas and have a good time. And when you can change their life, it changes your life, right? So it's amazing to be able to do that, and it's amazing that again, it put me in a financial position where it was just that one and done, right? Like it relieves so much stress and anxiety, because it's consistent every single month, right? Like your grandmas and grandpas are there. You move them in, and they're there for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years sometimes, right? So you're not constantly hustling. You're not constantly making sales. So it's an amazing industry, and I'm super excited to share with you more in depth about it. So tonight we're going to talk about what it is. What is an assisted living mansion? Kind of what is our niche? How we do this, and how is it that we are able to make $40,000 to $60,000 net each month, where some assisted livings, they're not doing that, right? They're making $5,000 or $10,000 or $12,000. So what's the difference? How are we able to do this? And there's a very specific niche that we are in here, and it's that is what is giving us this result. So we'll share what that is, but we're going to deep dive into zoning today, right? How do we do zoning? How do we pick where we want to be, and what kind of zoning we should be, and how do we talk to the city, and what kind of questions should we be asking, and break into that zoning, and then we'll see how I can help you further from there. Okay, so this is what we're talking about today: how to start your own assisted living mansion, how to do something you love, and invest with a purpose. So let's get going. All right, so like I said, we make $40,000 to $60,000 net each month from one mansion. So here is my assisted living Platinum Resort at Mesa, this white building on the left with a brown door. We're building a neighborhood, our own neighborhood of assisted living mansions. So on the right, this gray house, this is one of our houses in our neighborhood, and we are breaking ground here. We're in Georgetown, Texas, and I'm building 4 of these. I'm building my own like little pocket neighborhood of mini mansions. They're about 10,000 square feet each, 16 bedrooms, 17 baths. They're completely custom designed. They're ADA. They're great for end-of-life use. They're completely practical and beautiful and high-end and just gorgeous. So keep an eye out for that. We will be sharing more about our construction and how that's going, building our own neighborhood of assisted living mansions. So again, I kind of talked about this a little bit, right? But on my journey here, I wanted to get to financial freedom. I wanted the one and done, right? I did a lot of different real estate type of deals, and I made $300 a month, $500 a month from this rental property. I did some flips and some other things, and it never really made a difference, right? You have the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, and it kind of evens out at the end of the year to be like, oh, that was pretty good, right? Like I made good money, I wasn't struggling, but I wanted that one and done. I wanted to be like, hey, let's just blow out that finish line. Let's be way across this, right? But so that's my financial freedom goal, and this did it. So I'm going to share my story and how that works and what those numbers look like, so you can consider this as an option for you. But I also wanted to be my own boss. That was really important to me. I hated working for the man. Wanted to get out of corporate America. And then I wanted to do something that I'm actually benefiting my community, right? That I'm serving those people and that I love what I do. I love to cook. So I go in sometimes and I just cook. So we have a chef full time, right, at our assisted living, but sometimes I'll still go in and I'll cook. Like, I just love to hang out with the grandmas and I'll make them something and stoke them out and then go and serve it and sit down with them at the table and just, shoot the breeze with them, have fun, laugh, and you want to do something where you love what you do. So this is us. Me on the left, obviously, right? Brett Shotkavis, that's me. Laura Shotkavis there in the middle, and Shannon Conway. We are the dream team here, the Palm team. Here's a little bit more bio on us. I have a real estate background, an entrepreneur, a speaker, and coach. Laura, she is also a real estate investor and an amazing interior designer. She designs all of our assisted living mansions. She's designed a lot of our real estate properties, some very high-end luxurious properties that we've done. And she's an amazing marketer and networker. That is really where her sweet spot is. That's living in her niche right there. Shannon on the right, we met a few years ago, been business partners for 2-3 years. She came from the assisted living corporate world. She had 20 years running the big facilities, right? She's a memory care director. She's a certified dementia practitioner, and she just loves to love on seniors. That is her God-given gift, to be able to make a difference with these seniors. So she actually teaches operations for us, and she's an amazing operations coach if you want to learn how to actually run the day-to-day operations and how to do a memory care. So let's talk about this niche, right? Let's talk about this huge opportunity, because there is a massive opportunity. There is a massive amount of seniors that need end-of-life care, right? We have the baby boomer wave that's here. But let's think about this. Not only is there that, there's this huge problem. And I'm going to break this down over the next couple of minutes. What is this problem? And I'm going to say the problem is assisted living. However you cut it, however you want to look at assisted living, it's usually always in a negative connotation. It's usually always bad, right? Everywhere you go, movies, the news, anything, right? It's like assisted living, like someone dies in the hallway. There was an article just last night about somebody like froze to death. They were a grandma outside and they were left outside or something like that. There's always just negative stuff, right? Like, it's a huge problem. So when you have a big problem, it gives you a big opportunity. If you can solve this problem, then there's a huge potential reward. So I'm going to say to you that we're going to break down this problem, and I'm going to say that we solved this problem here locally in our Central Texas area, and we're reaping the rewards of it because we have 62 people on our wait list. We're making, again, amazing money, but this can be done all over, because it's not just a problem where I am. This is a worldwide, maybe, I don't know the whole world, at least a US wide problem, right? Like, there is no great assisted livings that are just like, a national change. This is like killing it. Like, oh yes, let's go do this, right? Like, there's nobody who's doing this on a big corporate, like, big scale. So let's talk about this problem. And I break this down into like 2 different sides to this problem, or 2 different potential solutions that are not cutting it. Now, historically, when you talk about assisted living, you think of the big facilities, right? They're 2 or 3 or 4 stories. You might have like 100 or 200 beds in these things. And that's what you think of. That's your main option when you are looking for end-of-life care, assisted living care, nursing home care, right? Like, when you get to that point, like, that's really most places in the country, that's really your only option. And those are not great options, right? They are historically known for bad care. They smell. They have this like vibe of like depression and death. Like, right when you walk in, you're like, get me out of this place, right? The staffing is always notorious for being bad, but there's also great things with these things, right? With these big facilities, you have your own room, and they're usually good sized rooms. You have your own bathroom, which is nice. People want that at the end of life, right? They usually have a chef. The chef may cook for 100 people, but at least they have someone who's trained to cook to do this. They usually have a nurse or an actual like professional director who can run the show. They have, a salon. They have memory care services. You can get all these end-of-life services that you need, right? Like you actually need these things as you are 99 years old or 85 years old or whatever the age is, right? You need some healthcare stuff at the end of life. You want that. You want the amenities. You just don't want to be in the big, smelly corporate building that, has a vibe like death. So what was the result of that, right? There was this new niche that kind of came into the scene, 10 or 20 years ago, started to become popularized, right? And it's this idea of this residential assisted living, right? So you take this house and you convert the garage and maybe you do an addition. And it's a house, right? Like here's an example, and you can see like there's a converted garage. But it's kind of usually mom and pop run, right? It's not like they have like a nurse or a big corporate director. They usually do not have private rooms with private bathrooms, right? They're usually shared rooms. It's kind of sometimes more janky, so to speak. Like you have like a little ramps that go down from like down the hallway where they converted the garage and things like that, right? Like you're not going to have a chef and a salon. You're not going to get the amenities, the end of life care amenities that you really want when you are that age, right? When your mom is declining and her meds are increasing and she's starting to be forgetful and wander and have memory care issues, you want an actual professional to take care of her. Now, you don't really want her to be in one of those big facilities. Some people would rather be in the smaller residential style, but there's give and takes on both sides, right? Like they both have pros and they both have cons. Now, I'm going to say that because of that, none of these options are really like a home run, a stellar option, right? None of these are great. They are good on both sides for some reasons and good and bad on both sides for some reasons. So I'm going to say there's a gap in the market here, right? There's an opportunity, and this is a nationwide opportunity because it's a nationwide problem. So let me talk to you about how we solve this problem. Now, we talked about there's pros and cons on both sides, right? There's good and there's bad. But what if we just took all the good and just got the bad and just said, get out of here? Like we're just not doing any of the bad. We only did the good, right? That was kind of my like vision for this. Like, how do I take everything and just make it all fit, make it all work, right? So that's what we did here. So I'm calling this an assisted living mansion. And here's our mansion, right? So really what this means to me is you're combining two different things here. You're combining all of the care and medical amenities that you get at a large facility, right? You want the private rooms, you want your private bath, they're good sized rooms, you want a chef who can cook, you want a salon, you want an on-call nurse or a full-time nurse, you want an actual director to run the show, you want to have memory care services, you want people who can handle your medications, you want hospice and home health and OT and PT and all these different things, right? You want it all. So that's part of it, right? We're bringing in, here's the big box stuff, right? All the amenities, we're bringing that side in. And then we're bringing in, okay, the smaller, safer, more homey style vibe. And so really we built these like huge mansions, right? Some of them, the new construction ones we're doing now, the 10,000 square feet, and they're like custom designed and they're gorgeous. So if you can have both of these things, right? We're not taking like these big houses and putting them with a parking lot in front with a red curb, right? Like I call those small boxes. They're building small boxes all over around me, right? They're 16 beds, but they just like a small facility. I don't want a small facility. That's not what we're doing here, right? That's just a small version of the big facility. I don't need that. I want like this boutique hotel, right? I want your caregivers to have pride in what they do and not be like this stuffy corporate vibe. So we combine both of these things here, right? The care and amenities that you get at a big facility combined with this like gorgeous mansion style boutique hotel in a residential style kind of vibe. So because we are doing that, we have seen an amazing, amazing reaction from our Central Texas area, right? We have a huge wait list. Before our first building, before we even had our license, we had all of our rooms sold, like literally checks in the bank, deposits down, ready to go, because no one's doing something like this. So let me break this down a little bit further. I'm saying here that what I think this niche is, the best opportunity in this niche is not to be too big and not to be too small. I think there's a sweet spot right in the middle where you can afford all the amenities of the big facilities and you can have that smaller, more intimate, gorgeous boutique style home or hotel. Right now, that sweet spot for me, that's like a 14 or 16 or 18 beds. I think that's where it is because of the income. You need to have a certain amount of income to pay for your nurse, your memory care director, the chef, the salon, all those kind of things, right? You have to have the resources for that. So I'm going to say for this niche, the most important number, all right, is the amount of beds you have. If anybody follows Grant Cardone, I love this because he says in the multifamily game, the most important number, right, is how big of a deal you're doing, how many beds you have, how many doors you have, right? Like, don't do a 6-door apartment, right? He says do a 60-door apartment, right? Because of the scale, because the number of beds will make all the difference in your deal. So I'll break this down a little bit more for me. For us to have all the amenities that we can offer, that a big facility can offer, right, we have higher expenses. And so for us, it's about 9 beds. About 9 beds full is break even. So it gives us about 7 beds of potential profit there. And I'll show you what that numbers look like. But I would say this, the sweet spot is where you need to be, because anything too big from there, now you're looking like a nursing home, a facility. Nobody wants that, right? That's a dinosaur. That's a thing of the past that people are getting away from. Or on the other side, the too small, now you don't have the numbers to bring on an actual director, an actual nurse to be able to run the show, to have the chef and the salon. You don't have the numbers to be able to support those kind of things. And now you're just not making any money. So I think, and I know from my own experience here, that it is the same amount of work or less to be bigger than it is to be smaller. Think of it this way. If you have 16 residents versus 8, right? You're going to have 2 caregivers for 16, 1 for 8. Plus, you're also going to have a manager and a director, right? So you have literally more staff on when you have 16 than when you have 8. Now, I'm going to say if you are the owner, that it's going to take you less time, less work on your part, on the owner's part. The caregivers, they're going to do the same amount of work regardless, right? But you as the owner, it is the same amount of work or less for way, way more pay, right? I think when you're talking these smaller, these 6, these 8 beds, I mean, most times you're trying to make 10 grand. That is literally your goal. I'm trying to make 10 grand. And if I have 2 empty beds, then I'm breaking even, right? In my niche, I'm trying to make 60,000, right? And if I have 2 open beds, I'm making 50,000. You're literally making 5 to 6 times the income from the same amount of work. And I think it's actually less work. So most important number in this niche is the number of beds, right? 14, 16, 18. Those are the kind of numbers that I love. So we talked about having all the amenities of these big facilities, right? So let's talk about pricing. And I'll give you an example of where we are at. We are at $7,000 to $8,000 as an average per bed. All our bedrooms are private, right? With a bathroom. We don't have shared rooms. But because we're charging, well, let me say it this way. Because we have all the amenities that the big facilities do, and our home is like this gorgeous boutique mansion, we are able to charge what the nicest new construction facilities are, right? When you have the new ones that are coming into town, they're building these big old monsters that are 4 stories and they're beautiful, but they're still kind of smelly and corporate-y. Like, we're charging what they are charging. So in our market here, that's about $8,000 a month. In some markets, that you may think like that's really low. In some other markets, you might think that's crazy high, right? It's all relative. So I would say whether it's 6 or whether it's $10,000 a month, it's going to be, this niche is to charge what the big boxes are charging that are the nicest, right? It's because we have all these amenities, the same amenities as them. So let's talk about the numbers here, because I remember before I got into this industry, I knew friends that were doing these smaller assisted livings, and I was looking at their numbers and I'm like, I don't think you guys make any money, right? They're like, oh yeah, we make money. I'm like, I don't think you do. Let's talk about your numbers. And again, they were making some money some months, but let me show you what our numbers look like. And again, what this niche is in that 14 to 18 beds. So here's a breakdown, right? 16 residents at average of 7,500 per bed. So we have at full occupancy, we have $120,000 a month in income. Okay, 120 grand comes in every single month. Our expenses on average, they're about 62,000. So again, that's including the building, that's including the mortgage, the taxes. A lot of this is staffing, right? And don't forget, I'm paying like 6 figures for someone, an actual director, a professional person to run the show, so that I'm not doing it. Paying 6 figures for that person. Plus I have staff on 24/7 and I have a chef. So then there's all my other expenses and food and utilities and insurance and all that kind of stuff, right? So with that, it's about 62,000. We net from this type of deal at 16 beds, $58,000 per month, right? 58 grand. And again, that's at full occupancy. So you say, Brett, you're not always full. You're right. We're not always full. We have a huge wait list, so we're pretty much always full. But even when we're not, you take 2 beds away at most, right? Like you're 50 grand, 48 grand. It's a huge number. So that's kind of what our niche is here, right? This sweet spot, 14, 16 beds, high end, custom luxury mansion that's ADA, and it provides all the care and amenities that you can get at one of these big facilities. So how do you do one of these? Like, where do you actually go as far as zoning when you're going to do this kind of stuff? So let's talk about this, because this is always one of these things where it's like, well, okay, that sounds great. I want to do it, but I talked to my city, or I knew someone who did it, and they said you couldn't do what you're talking about, Brett. Okay, well, let's break it down. There's different type of zonings, right? Residential zoning, you have commercial zoning, multifamily zoning, you have some areas, you have other zonings, right? Agriculture, vacant land, things like that, and then some non-zoned areas. So we're going to break down these 4 and talk about them in a bit more detail here. So the most common when you're talking about a smaller assisted living or a residential assisted living, that zoning is residential, right? So across the country, different areas have different amounts of beds that they say you can have in there, right? Some places they say, oh, you can only have 6 beds in our residential zoned area, or some places will say 8. There's a couple that say 10, right? Again, I'm going back to this idea that I am not a believer in the small. I think it's too small. I think that you're going to do twice as much work for a tiny bit of the pay. And I'm here to show you, here's another way how to think outside the box on this and how to do it in a different way. So residential is an option, right? There are people who can show you how to do this residential style of assisted living. It's not for me. I did it. I had a 9-bed, barely made me money. It's not for me. But let's think of it this way. Everywhere in the country, right? You have cities and counties that they have residential zoning. You can just go take a house and go talk to the city and say, hey, I want to do a small assisted living. And they'll usually give you a little flack, but okay, yes, sure, you can do it if you follow this, and this, and do this and this. Now, you might say, hey, Brett, well, what about the Fair Housing Act, right? The Fair Housing Act says that you can't discriminate against people at end of life with disabilities, and some of those things, are mental disabilities and physical disabilities, and these people have disabilities, so they can't stop me. Well, yes, that is true. Now, they can't stop you from doing a small assisted living in a house, right? But they can stop you from having a certain number of beds, right? A certain number that actually makes a profit. So most times, the whole country wide, most cities will say, hey, yes, you can do your deal. You can have a small residential style assisted living, but you can only have 6 beds, right? Only 6. And for me, that's not okay. Right? I did it at 9 and barely made any money, let alone 6, right? Like that means you only have 1 staff person, right? What happens when that staff person calls out sick? That means if you only have 1 staff person, you're probably only hiring 4 people, right? Like, these ladies, like they're all friends and buddy, they all quit at the same time, right? They text each other, let's quit, let's screw the boss, right? Like that's real life. Like your people will just all vanish. Like one day, they're not telling you it's Christmas Eve. They're like, hey, no one's coming in. No, we all quit, right? You're like, what do I do, right? Like, you don't want to be in that situation. Too small is hard. It's hard to bring in the income. It's hard from a staffing perspective also, right? We are in this weird like inflation times where there's not a housing shortage, but like a shortage of labor, right? Like it's a real thing. You don't want to be too small. It will make the labor super difficult to be able to do. So can you do residential everywhere? Yes, you can. And you can do 6 beds everywhere. You can do 8 beds some places. You can do 10 beds some places, right? Maybe you can do more than that in some residential areas, but usually not. So let me break down some of these other options, right? Let's talk about the bottom 3 here. I'll kind of group them together and talk about them together. because this is where my niche is, right? This is where I'm doing. I am not going into residential. I'm going into commercial or multifamily or non-zoned areas. So let's talk about this. If you are going to the city or the county and you say, hey, I want to do this smaller assisted living, I want to have like a 14 or 16 or 18 bed home, and I want to, buy this house and do a big addition to it, or I want to build new construction or something to that effect, right? They're gonna say you can't do that big of a house or that many beds in residential area, right? You can't do 16 most of the times, but you can do it in a commercial area. Now think about like different thoroughfares that have they've expanded, and you actually have like houses. You actually have like old school houses on some of these thoroughfares, right? They're now zoned commercial, right? You've seen like barbershops in them, attorneys in them, CPAs in them, right? Like those old school houses have turned commercial, right? They've rezoned and now they're commercial. So look to some of these areas, right? Or look to vacant land in some of these commercial areas. So I've done that. I bought vacant land in a commercial area. And again, the city thinks my whole deal, the city calls me commercial. I don't call myself commercial, but they call me commercial. They have me pull commercial permits and commercial fire sprinklers and commercial all this stuff. Whatever, I don't care, right? Like I'm going to build my new buildings, right? They have the bones of commercial, but then I wrap them in this big, beautiful mansion that looks residential. So just because they had throw hoops at you saying you have to do this and this and that's commercial, like, okay, fine, but I'm gonna dress it the way I want to dress it, right? It's gonna look residential. I'm gonna style it residential. I'm not gonna put a parking lot out front, right? Like I'm gonna have a driveway and a mailbox. So I would look at some of these commercial options, right? Or multifamily. Multifamily, again, like, can you have 16 residents there? And a lot of times I'm seeing that you can, right? So don't go the way of residential. If you can put a small apartment building there, then let's put a small assisted living there, right? I would go and talk to the city and be like, okay, here are some of my questions. Here's my vision. Here's what I want to do, right? I want to build this huge single story home, and, I want to take care of seniors in it, and I'll make it ADA. You probably want me to have sprinklers and an alarm. And okay, we'll do all that. Now, where can I be? Can I be on residential? They're probably gonna tell you no. Okay. Well, the next question is, well, what about commercial? Or what about mixed use? Or what about multifamily? Can I be in these areas, right? And that's where I've come and made my presence known and found these other areas where I can do this kind of stuff. And a lot of times, after you go in and you have a first kind of preliminary conversation with them, you'll get the goods. Like they'll tell you, okay, here and here, you can do it on these kind of zonings. And then you can go back home. And a lot of times cities are really great about having their mapping system online, where they can break down. You can see all the different zoning. You can search everything. A lot of times they have like the sewer lines and the water lines and everything you can think of there, right? So I would go and have that conversation with them. I wouldn't look for residential for this niche. Now, let me talk about this last one here, the non-zoned areas. Sometimes you go right outside of the city's limits and you're either like in the county's limits. Sometimes you're in an area where they don't have zoning yet, depending on where you're at in the country, or sometimes you're in the county's area and the county is very, very chill and doesn't care. I've been in this particular circumstance a couple times where I've been outside of the city's limits and the city has no jurisdiction, and the county has been very, very lax and doesn't mind that I do something that kind of is hybrid of residential and hybrid of commercial. So that's another thing to look at, right? Like outside of the city limits or non-zoned areas. I would go and talk to either the city or county on that. And I would get on that map and like, what's just outside of that map, right? Can I be just outside of that? So a lot of times with all the expansion going on, you're not like too far away. You're not out in the middle of the country, next to the cows and stuff, right? You're 5 minutes from town, right? You're 5 minutes from the city. You're right there where everyone wants to be. So I would consider that when we're talking to zoning. I would go to have a little heart-to-heart, share what your vision is, and don't be surprised when they tell you no on residential. But don't think that your deal is over because of that. Your deal's just getting started. Now let's think, what's the next thing, right? Where's that, the commercial, the mixed use, the multifamily, the non-zone, the outside of the city limits kind of stuff. Okay, that's how you work the zoning on this kind of deal. Because I'll tell you from my own experience, having a 9-bed didn't make any money. Right? You want to have a 10-bed, a 6-bed, an 8-bed, by all means, try it. It is very difficult to do. So Let's talk about this. And we touched on some of this stuff, right? But here, this is kind of my thoughts. Like, zoning limits equals limits on your income, right? Because if you're in that residential zoning and they're putting limits of you of like 6 or 8, they're literally limiting your income. Like, it's not a good deal. I wouldn't do that kind of deal. So again, we talk about this niche. Bigger is better. 14, 16, 18. Now, I have people say to me like, well, you know, Brett, that's like just too big of a deal for me, right? Like, I'm kind of a newbie. I've never done one. I'd rather do a small one. It seems easier. It seems more manageable. And I would tell you this, like, just because it's easier to do a bad deal doesn't mean you should do it. Like, yes, it's harder to do a good deal, but what would you rather do? Easier to do a bad deal or harder to do a good deal, right? Like, I fight for the good deal. Now, let me say this. You kind of looked at what our numbers are, right? You saw what it looks like, you know, $40,000 to $60,000 net each month. Now, I think that it is way, way easier to bring in partners on this kind of deal. It's big enough, right, that you can bring in some partners on it. It's almost like having a small apartment building, right? It's like a 20-unit apartment building or something like that, right? As far as costs and things like that. So you wouldn't necessarily go and do that yourself, right? You might bring in one or two or three partners. So I would say this: if you're going to carve up a monthly income of $60,000 a month, even if there's you plus 2 other people, that's still 20,000, 20,000, 20,000, right? Like, there's a lot of money to be able to share on this. And so I like to think of it this way. I think there's a great team with 2 or 3 people. You're going to have one person who is the operations person. They're like the caregiver, the nurse, that kind of person who's going to run this, right? They're going to have a role when the operations is going. There's a second person who's like the real estate person or the business person, right? They're going to hire the contractor. They're going to go talk to the city about this kind of stuff, right? So there's 2 people there. And there's a third person, is the money person. They're not going to do anything except for bring the cash to the table, right? They're going to go talk to the bank. They're going to be the one signing their name. They're going to be the one covering up the down payment and paying for the furniture and the plates and everything else, right? You got a money person. They're going to get their cut. They're not going to do anything, right? And you're going to have either the 1 or 2 other people who can do this. So if there's 2 of you, then it's 30 grand each, right? Which is an amazing deal. It's still better than a bad 6-bed deal. Or if there's 3 of you, it's 20 grand each. Like, there's a lot of money to be able to carve up in these kind of deals. So bigger is better. And don't think that it's too hard. It's not too hard. It might be too hard if you did it yourself. But if you went and found someone who is great at the operations kind of stuff, or if you found someone who has, you know, 500 grand sitting in their retirement account and they have a great W-2 job, they can go sign for a loan. And then it's not a big deal. So talk about this a smidge more, right? Like, I did this the same kind of way. I didn't have the money. I didn't use any of my own money. I went and found someone who had a great job, who had money in a retirement account. They actually had money in the stock market, and they pulled it out of the stock market to invest with me. All right. So I was able to pay them a great return. They're getting a huge portion, making money every month. And that was, it made the deal easy for me to get done. So no money is required on your part if you were the person putting this deal together. You're going to go to the bank. The bank's going to give you the majority of the money. Your money partner is going to come up with the minority amount, 20, 30% of the capital. I would add this, that it's easy to raise money for this kind of deal because everyone is aware of this problem. Everyone can relate to it. Everyone has a mother or father that got old, or another type of loved one who has needed this type of care, whether they went into a big facility or not. They know that there's not really good options out there. So if you can provide an awesome option that makes 40 to 60 grand a month, and you're helping your people, your community, your city, like, people are just, they're dying for something to be able to invest in that makes amazing money and that helps people. So if you can be that hero and say, hey, you know, hey person, hey friend of friend, like, let me show you this. Let's have coffee. Let me tell you about my vision for what we can do here, and take this assisted living mansion niche and run with it. So I kind of want to wrap up with this, right? Like, this is a one and done kind of deal. Again, like that 14, 16, 18 bed, to be able to consistently make that money every single month has been amazing for me, for my partners, for Laura and Shannon. Like, I would just say, like, okay, it's a little bit harder. It takes a little bit more time than doing a smaller deal. but it's 5 times the profit. And do you want to do one deal that like doesn't get you very far, or do you want to do one deal that gets you all the way there, right? Like a one and done kind of deal. So that was it for us, right? I was just one mansion away, got my one mansion. I'm actually building 4 more now, right? Like it's just all gravy on top. So this is a game changer for me, and I hope it is a help for you. So what's next? If you want to learn more about this, right? You want to dig more into this. You're curious about it. You know you want to do this. You're not sure about it. You can get more info at our website. It's palm.university. The White House that you saw on the first screen, right? That's our mansion in Georgetown. You can actually take a virtual tour. You can actually walk through, see all the bedrooms, see everything, see how Laura designed it, and you can walk through there. Also, we got a bunch of different videos on there. We have extra PDFs and other documents that you can download, and you can learn more about this and get a bunch of information from us. Additionally, if you are saying, hey, this is something I want to do, I want to know more about it, I want education on this, I want training on this, we offer a 6-month startup training, right? We'll teach you everything you need to be able to go from zero to I have my license, right? I've raised the money, I've done the building, I've got the license, I did the whole thing, right? All the expert education, online support. Anytime you have a question, you can reach out to us. And then we do a live monthly coaching call. We deep dive into a specific topic each month, and then you can ask any questions you have. I'm on the call as long as need to get everyone's questions answered. So promo code for tonight, this will be here for the next couple days, 1,000 off. 1,000 off is the promo code. It drops the price to $997. So I'm so happy that you're all here. I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any other questions, you are able to shoot me an email, and I hope that this was super beneficial for you guys. So thank you so much, and have a blessed evening.